Hey guys, welcome back to another video by Scully. So this is a video I contemplated making for quite some time because I really wanted to talk about it, but it's kind of something that's a little hard to get out in the open with there being so much stigma and just being a personal topic altogether. But I wanted to talk about hypersexuality, libido, that kind of stuff. So I'll try my best to make this video as less awkward as possible, but it is a topic that does need to be covered, so I'm going to just kind of touch base on that briefly. So your libido is the part of you that kind of, like if you have a high or low sex drive, it's usually influenced by your libido. That can, a lot of things can alter that. As a person, that can fluctuate depending on the person. Some people can have a big need for that stuff and some don't. But then there's also substances that can affect that as well. Like there are certain drugs that can make it higher or lower. If you're being treated for a certain mental disorder, especially something like depression, not only can something like depression make it kind of complicated in general, but then a lot of medications to treat it, such as antidepressants, can also, from some of the side effects, can cause that to go down in some people. Some people, if they start something like medication, it may not affect their need for that really at all. It might just for the most part stay the same. So why is this such an important topic to talk about? Well, part of it is an important topic to talk about not only because of, like I mentioned, the stigma, but also because there are a lot of behaviors in this category that people experience that they don't always like to talk about. People may not want to talk about, I don't know if I want to call it sexual promiscuity, but basically, I hope that that's not too offensive of a term, but sometimes people call it that. Like if you have a lot of relationships or if you have a lot of activity going on in that department, that can wreak a lot of havoc on your life, especially if you have a mood disorder where, like I said, depression can make it, kind of low for some people, but in things like bipolar and mania, it can be quite high and quite intense for some people. And it may not always necessarily express itself as somebody kind of just being with a lot of people. It could also just simply be having a lot of time alone, like kind of engaging and watching a lot of like pornography or excessive masturbation and kind of things where, maybe they're not doing it with people so much, but they still have some sort of outlet. And one of the other reasons I wanted to bring this up is that, especially with someone having a very high sex drive, there's the stigma of being a sex addict, which, some people are sex addicts, but people tend to confuse things like hypersexuality and sex addiction together when they're not always related. Because with hypersexuality, if you are somebody who's having, like, for example, a manic episode of bipolar disorder, you may only have the hypersexuality during that episode, and once the episode kind of ends, you kind of go back to your kind of normal. You may not even really want to do anything like that afterward, but for somebody with a sex addiction, it tends to be more on a kind of like a longer period of time, and it doesn't seem to be as cyclical as something like mood swings or, something that maybe goes away only when you're depressed and then comes back or anything like that. So, yeah, there's a lot of kind of terms that get thrown around with this that people tend to kind of mix up because, you can look at different types of people and notice different behaviors and worse, even see some similar ones and think that both people have the same thing and they don't. Now, basically, this is kind of also a complicated subject because if you are somebody who has a high or low sex drive, what are you supposed to do if it's affecting your life? And if you're somebody who's like married or in a relationship, various types of counseling and therapy may be needed if you're somebody who maybe your need tends to be much lower than your partner's and it tends to cause issues in your relationship. So kind of working with your partner and communicating with them and kind of seeing if there's any kind of maybe reason behind it or anything you can kind of do to maybe kind of compromise or just kind of really seeing what's going on at the root of this issue, like see what's kind of making this manifest. Now, if you were somebody who doesn't have a partner, this may or may not affect you quite as much in terms of a relationship standpoint, but it can still affect jobs and just your day-to-day life if it's something that becomes either too much or too little. So if you're somebody who maybe has pretty high libido and it's gotten you into trouble with things like watching a lot of porn or maybe you've kind of been around with a lot of people or just kind of had a lot of just kind of consequences like diseases and stuff as a result, really kind of noticing patterns about yourself and seeing what you can do to kind of minimize it, because it is something to a degree that is a need that really it's considered a need, maybe not as much as like hunger or anything like that, but it is a need. So it is normal to some degree to have some desire, and it's also normal to some degree to have maybe not a lot of desire. But if it is wreaking havoc on your life, then that's kind of when you look back and you think, okay, well, clearly this is kind of getting me into trouble. Maybe I should try to look at this and kind of see what I can do to help. And with this being a deep topic, I know that this is also an area where some people have like kind of trauma related to this kind of stuff. People have had bad experiences, especially in relationships, where they blame themselves, like if they didn't make a lot of very good choices. And if you are somebody who's not proud of all your choices, don't beat yourself up about things like that, because we all have things in our life that we're not proud of. You know, we all look back and wish we hadn't done certain things, and especially if it's with things like infidelity. I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of stigma around that too, and I think a lot of people kind of already know how that is, where obviously it's not the greatest, really, in a lot of circumstances, but really kind of taking your past and kind of learning from things and just kind of trial and error, and okay, this didn't work in the past, what can work now? Give yourself a chance to kind of go into this department, and don't be afraid to look at it if it needs to be altered in some way, like if you need to make better choices, or if you've maybe noticed certain habits you're kind of embarrassed of. Because this is a very normal topic for people to talk about, and it's understandable why people are embarrassed about it, but it is something that still needs to be discussed because it's something that a lot of people deal with. And I think people don't get to the root of it because they're ashamed or they're embarrassed or they feel like it's a taboo thing to talk about. And for the record, with the whole hypersexuality thing, I'm not using that as an excuse to like cheat on your partner or anything like that. I'm just saying that I know that some people have, again, things in this department in their past that could affect certain choices, could affect certain reasons why certain things happened. And again, just really just kind of looking within yourself and just kind of noticing that. And if you can look at yourself and, know that you need to make changes on things, and you've learned from your past mistakes, and you really should give yourself some credit. And this isn't the kind of thing that I want people to look at and, don't go around shaming people who've maybe had a lot of partners, or people that are very open about maybe their sex life, sexuality, or anything like that, because a lot of those are very personal. So I don't want anybody looking at this and being offended by this in any way, because I understand this is quite a triggering topic, and I want people to be able to talk about things like this, because these things, they play a bigger part in people's lives in the past, present, and future than people think. So this is something that I would want people to really kind of be aware of, because you don't always think about it until it comes up at unexpected moments, or you start noticing certain behaviors. And if somebody does have to go to the doctor because they think they have a sexually transmitted disease, that's not a good feeling, especially if it was something infidelity related, where maybe they already have a lot of guilt about it, or maybe they know they made poor choices. So if you ever talk to people that kind of have things like this, just really, even if you don't entirely understand it, just try your best to be very sympathetic. Hopefully people in relationships will communicate with their partner, or however many people that they're involved with, and hopefully prevent a lot of miscommunications and things from happening, but also know that people are human, and, this is something that it just plays a really big role in people's lives, and I just hope that people can talk about this to kind of get more information out there and less stigma. So, until next time, have a great day, guys.